times are weird, so on this week's Audiobook Club, we're meant to be reviewing and recommending The History of Modern Britain by Andrew Marr.
The Second World War was such a shattering, overwhelming experience for Britain that it is tempting to isolate the country we became afterwards from the pre-war Britain, as if a huge blade fell across the national story. In obvious ways, this is true. The war changed Britain physically and industrially, destroying city centres. It ultimately changed who lived here by encouraging both immigration and emigration. It changed Britain's political climate and our attitude to government. It even changed, through a subsequent jump in the birth rate, relations between the generations. Yet in other ways, post-war Britain was simply a continuation of the Britain of the 30s. When it was all over, and before Churchill was voted out of power, the Parliament of 1945 was the same one elected in 1935, a Commons frozen from another time.
Hello, I'm Steve Phillips and welcome to another episode of Audiobook Club, and joining me on a trip down British memory lane, it's Matt Layton.
Hello, Steve.
Hello, Matt. Now, question here. I recognise the book, but not necessarily the voice.
Yes. A bit more fundamental problem than that, Steve.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I haven't done my homework.
You haven't done your homework?
No, the dog ate my homework.
Right. You know how I'm feeling, right? I'm feeling how Noel Edmonds felt about 20 years ago on Noel's house party when he'd been obviously setting up a lot of people for the gotchas. Do you remember the gotchas that he used to do?
This was a practical joke style thing.
Yeah, it was
yes.
a practical joke style thing where they take a celebrity and they play horrible practical jokes and make a fool out of them. And then Noel had it done to him on the last episode of the series, and that's how I'm feeling right now. I'll be straight up front. It's a very niche reference. It's all I've got in the locker, though.
No, look, I am here. I'm here in front of you, prostrate.
Oh yes, you are. Don't do that.
Prostate. I'm prostate in front of you.
That's a way.
I'm winking.
I can see.
And I'm really sorry. I'm very glad that I got a chance to begin listening to A History of Modern Britain by Andrew Marr. I feel it is an important piece of work. I have to say, as you quite rightly point out, when it wasn't Andrew Marr reading it, I was slightly disappointed, and then looked down the barrel of 29 hours and 59 minutes spending time with somebody who wasn't Andrew Marr, and I got distracted. I went off and I did other things. But you and I are going to talk about, you don't know about this yet. I've warned you that something's coming, but you and I are about to make the best episode of Audiobook Club ever, I promise. We're about to talk about something that is very dear to both of our hearts.
Okay.
But before we do that, let's do the cheat notes on A History of Modern Britain. And it actually feeds into what we're going to be talking about. So we'll start as usual with the author, Andrew Marr, or indeed Andrew William Stevenson Marr, is a British journalist and broadcaster. In 2000, he became the editor of BBC, the political editor of BBC News. Now, we had Jeff White on the show recently, doing something about the Lazarus heist. He was a guest on the show, and we were talking to him about working for the BBC. And he said, well, when you're working for the BBC, it's quite important. You become almost the official historical record of what goes on what's going on in the UK. The idea is that the BBC is entirely unbiased and a public service broadcaster, and that if the individual journalists are not allowed to have opinions, they're meant to be writing the historical record. So as political editor of the BBC News, it's one of the big jobs, and basically, he ultimately in that role, you are the scribe of what's happening in British government and British politics. Would you say that is fair, Steve?
Yeah, that's a very, very neat summary. Yeah.
In many ways, they're not allowed opinions. They have to report the news, and they are public servants. Then in 2002, most countries have a Sunday morning politics program. There's one here in Australia where I live, and it's quite an important thing. It sets the agenda for the week ahead. And in 2002, Andrew Marr he took over that slot. So he's from Sir David Frost. Indeed. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that.
Sir David.
Who famously, for our international audience, is the David Frost of the Frost-Nixon interviews, where he basically boxed President Nixon into a corner and caused the downfall of the American president.
Yeah, David Frost is pretty global. I think we're on safe ground there. I think he made it big in the States, didn't he?
Yes. Andrew Marr. This book comes from a series he presented for the BBC called The History of Modern Britain. But recently, Marr has moved on from the BBC. He's 63 years old. He's moved to LBC, which was the first commercial radio station in the UK in its original guise. It used to stand for London Broadcasting Company, but now it's become an evil commercial empire, and they've changed the initials to mean Leading Britain's Conversation. And Andrew Marr presents a show at 6:00 on that, where now he's free of the shackles of the BBC, is allowed a bit more of an opinion. So he's still there. Have you seen him on LBC, Steve?
No, because it's a radio station. No, I'm sorry, I'm being facetious there. Yes, I have.
Funnily enough, you're beginning to sniff out exactly what I'm talking about, which is that I consume James O'Brien on LBC. I grew up listening to the radio. I used to have the radio under my pillow where other kids would be reading.
Oh, me too. Yeah, I'm with you. There's solidarity, brother. Yeah.
And one of the stations I listened to late at night was LBC. These days, I consume LBC on YouTube. I don't listen to the 3-hour shows. I watch the 3-minute clips, the opinion pieces that I've been watching. James O'Brien, who's famously, he's a sort of a liberal shock jock, I think is the way you'd put it. He sort of points out the hypocrisy of the government, but tries to be nice and a good person as well. That's kind of his brand. So I've been watching him on LBC for 2 years, and then Andrew Marr, age of 63, public servant since the year 2000. He's got a right to go off and make a little bit of money by working for LBC, and I now watch and enjoy, particularly in the last few weeks, where in the UK the political situation has been somewhat torrid. I've enjoyed watching the former historian for the BBC in terms of politics finally let off the leash and allowed to demonstrate his own opinion. And I'm really enjoying that new Andrew Marr, but I'm surprised. I'm consuming it not on the radio where you would traditionally find me, but I'm like many other people, my media consumption has moved to YouTube videos.
Same as me.
I'm surprised. If I'm late 40s and I'm doing it. It is amazing how pervasive this change in the way we consume media has come. More of that later. Andrew Marr's personal life is quite interesting. He had a stroke in 2013 in his early 50s, and he was in hospital for 2 months. He had to be nursed back to recovery, but he was back on air by September of that year, so 7-8 months later. Then there's the matter of the injunction, the super injunction, where basically Andrew Marr, on April 26, 2011, following legal action by Private Eye editor Ian Hislop, an interview with Marr was published in the Daily Mail in which he revealed the super injunction had recovered the reporting of an extramarital affair with a female journalist. Quite interesting, this. There was also a bit afterwards where he was rumoured to have fathered a child by said female journalist, and that was later categorically proven to be false. But my personal connection, you asked me what my angle on this one was, and I said to you underneath, said affair happened in the building where I used to live, the flat in London that you've been in, indeed in the room above my living room.
Oh, so you were like Alf Garnett with your broomstick banging on the ceiling.
And the answer is no. I was. We were in flat. We were in the flat directly beneath that. Didn't have a clue that it was going on. Never saw him. Would have said hello if I did. But I can now reveal to you that Andrew Marr categorically did not father a child in the flat above ours back in London.
Well, you would have known something. You would have known something. I mean, you've got a keen ear, you know. I mean, I've always said that. You've got a keen ear. And you would have had, the whole beer glass against the wall business that you can do, to see what's going on in the next room. I imagine you had like some sort of telescopic long beer glass that goes to ceilings. And
my bat, I don't need that. I've got bat dar. But yes, I think we've skirted the edge of libel law now enough. Let's get back to his book.
The book, we're not covered by any lawyers at all here. Actually, we have to look at the edit.
It's all right. I've thought it out carefully. We should be okay. Remember, I can categorically state that Andrew Marr did not father a child. That's what I'm saying.
This was initially supposed to be a review of the history of modern Britain.
Yeah, well, in many ways, it still is, Steve.
It still is in a very roundabout way.
So the book is a history of modern Britain. It was written in 2008. It goes from basically the first his key date is a date in 1940. During the Second World War, and how the country changed and went through, the post-war years, the baby boom, Thatcher in the 80s, Tony Blair, and into austerity. And there's 29 hours of that, and I have to confess I'm only about 2 hours in. The next thing we always do is talk about the narration of the performance. As we both pointed out, Richard Timson, the narrator, I was slightly disappointed that it wasn't Andrew Marr, but as discussed, he's a very busy man. And the other thing that maybe I'm overstretching it, but because of the health issues he's had, I should imagine that it would not be an easy job for him to sit in a studio for 60 hours recording a book.
Well, yes. Now, I should probably at this point point out something to you.
Go.
There's a strong chance that Andrew Marr was in the next door recording booth as Richard Timson, also recording the book, because there are actually, and I'm sorry about this, but it looks like you've been listening to the wrong one if you wanted Andrew Marr to narrate it, because he actually did read the book. So the version I have and that I've got, it's him.
No,
it's him. Yeah.
Oh,
so it's real, and believe me, and I agree with you. So Andrew Marr's written. He's got a fair few audiobooks out actually, and they're slightly differently titled. And I must admit, my heart did sink when I heard the foreword from Andrew Marr, and he utters the words, "And now here's someone else to read the book." I'm like you. I kind of sort of went. I love how he writes. I think he's so accessible. But him performing his own words is really, really good, because he's got that style.
So hold on, hold on. So you're saying that you've got a version of the book where he reads the introduction. He doesn't read the introduction in the copy that I've got.
Does he not? I'll tell you what I can do at this point. I can tell you what I can do is Can I play a clip? Can I play a clip back to you?
Yeah.
It's going to be a bit rude. It's going to be a bit rudimentary, this, because I'm literally going to play it from my phone, so it's not the audio quality, but it's just to prove. Here we go.
And as aggressive as ever about the quality of journalism, Campbell then left Downing Street. After Iraq, one of the most common jibes about Blair was simply...
So that's just to prove that... he does. Look, you need it proving. Of course, you didn't ask for it to be proved. You believe me straight up.
I'm gutted and professionally embarrassed.
No, don't be. I think it's a great thing. It actually does serve actually something that I'm sure many of us come across. we wouldn't be the first in this situation, because there are sometimes two versions. There are sometimes one that's done by the writer, and another one that's done by a hired voice. And so here we've essentially reviewed the same book but different books.
Yeah. That's okay. So I have a whole thing now about the style of Richard Timson's reading. But now it's my turn to play a clip.
Oh, go on.
So this is what Richard Timson sounds like. I think it's a reasonable impression of Andrew Marr, but as someone who's been in our lives for 20 years, we are not necessarily... You're just used to him. But here's Mr. Timson.
But Dalton had had a difficult and unsettling day until he leaked the budget, having just come from unpleasant and confrontational talks at the palace about how much money Philip and Elizabeth, the new royal couple, should get from the civil list.
Now, if you don't listen to the words of that, the thing that's quite striking is what my friend Giuseppe, who knows something about music, would refer to as the cadence of it. The rhythm and the intonation go. Here's a clip of Andrew Marr himself in Quality, because I had to go somewhere else to find it, doing the job that I talked about earlier of bringing opinion rather than writing history at LBC. So this is Andrew Marr from about 2 weeks ago.
Good evening to you. Now, my job as a reporter, as I see it, is pretty simple. It's to tell you what I think is going on away from the cameras and the microphones as well as in front of them. And there's lots to tell you today. But first, if you'll forgive me, I want to say something a little more personal, because overnight I've been reflecting on an interview I did with Max Hastings, the historian and former Telegraph editor, who talked of his grief as someone who loves this country, about how it was being made to seem absurd in the eyes of the world. Well, I love this country too. I love its weather and its humour and its buildings and its tolerance and variety and its beer and even, yes, its food. I've written books and made films about its history. Among my family who fought in the last war, we lost a Spitfire pilot over Norway and a very young naval lieutenant at Dunkirk. I'm a patriotic member of a patriotic family, and there is nothing about our current economic and political crisis that doesn't make me squirm with embarrassment and grief.
Whoa!
Wow.
That's just amazing. So you can imagine my disappointment where I didn't get that man. I got Richard Timson, a reasonable impression. He's adopted the rhythms of Andrew Marr's speech and the emphasis, and he's a similar accented person, even though he sounds a bit more like an actor, but it wasn't that. I'm almost tempted to play that again. It's such a good minute of radio. I think that's fantastic.
It is. I mean, I haven't heard that before, and so I think what we're saying is that if you hire, and it's not personal to Richard Timson here at all. This could be anyone else. It wasn't Bill. It wasn't. I was going to say Bill Marr, because we talked about him last week. It wasn't Andrew Marr, but I think we can probably say that from everything you've said there, from Richard Timson, it's a technically good performance, and that's probably the key thing, isn't it?
Competent is a word we sometimes use not as a compliment on this show. And it's nothing against Richard Timson. It's the fact that it's just not that.
Exactly.
It's not that level of passion and a voice, if you're from the UK, that you are probably familiar with. A voice, a person that has been in your living room. Even if you watch the news and don't know the names of the correspondents, which, I certainly used to do when I was younger, I would recognize him if I saw him in the street or heard him talking somewhere else, even if you only watch the news casually in the UK. I think you can see where I'm heading with this, Steve. It's interesting that Andrew Marr is now allowed to give his opinion. It's the second time we've spoken about somebody who has worked at the BBC and then it's a double-edged sword. You have the shackles released and you're allowed to have your opinion, but then you are no longer the voice of the record of the official history of the UK. We talked about Simon Mayo leaving the BBC a couple of months ago, and how he was tired of working for the organisation, went to a commercial competitor in order to make a bit of cash before retirement. And as I say, I don't blame Andrew Marr for that. And I love being able to hear him being impassioned. But in general, you and I, one thing we share is a serious love of the BBC. And and particularly BBC Radio. Fair?
Yeah, yes, we do. We do. I feel, I don't know if this is the right time to make the point, because you're probably halfway through your point. No,
this is something that I know. I want to hear your opinion on this, because I got a message from you in the middle of last week saying, have you seen what's happened to BBC local radio?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's just heartbreaking. But the thing about, we talk about Andrew Marr going to LBC, Simon Mayo leaving the BBC, and it's been in the news about how many people are leaving the BBC and going to commercial for various reasons. I don't know whether it's a financial thing. Could well be, of course. We've all got to make a living and everything, and you want to provide and all the rest of it. But it's I think that also there's probably an element of actually wanting to do something else, in a different environment where, and there are pretty stringent editorial guidelines for the BBC, right? Because the BBC is the only organisation that is up there to be shot at, because we as British taxpayers pay for it. We pay for the licence fee, so we own it. And so we are on their case more than anyone else's about impartiality and being down the line and all the rest of it. So anything that could be construed is going to be leapt upon. And I'm
construed as personal opinion.
Personal opinion, leaning right or left or whatever, and actually, it could be a case of actually, well, no, you can still be I want to be that objective journalist, but I need that arena where I'm not feeling like I've got the icy glove of someone on my shoulder the whole time, and So you see, Emily Maitlis and John Sopel have left there to go and do the news agents at the same company at Global as well.
Yep. Funnily enough, I'm going to talk about Americast, the thing that they left behind, in a moment as well. For our international listener, let's imagine we're explaining this to Shane. There are two things that I miss about living in the United Kingdom that I feel you don't really appreciate, because they've always been there, and they are the BBC and the National Health Service, the British Broadcasting Corporation and the National Health Service. Both of them troubled organisations in their own way, but also both of them brilliant, world-leading organisations as well. There are many in America who wish they had the wish they had the National Health Service. The BBC, I can tell you now, living in a country that doesn't have a national broadcaster. Well, it does.
You've got the ABC,
doesn't
isn't
have
it?
one
ABC,
of the
the ABC.
Yeah. There's a really subtle difference here, Steve, that I'm a bit geeky and a bit anarchy about. And that is, while we say that the BBC licence fee is a tax, it's not actually a tax.
No.
So in other countries, like here in Australia, the national broadcaster is paid for by the government. The government decides directly what the budget will be. In the UK, we make the distinction, and part of the reason that you and I love the BBC, worked damn hard to get into working for the BBC, and worked damn hard once we were there, is because it's considered to be genuinely impartial. It's founded, so this month happens to be, or last month I think it was 100 years since the BBC was founded. And the aim of the organisation was to inform, educate and entertain, in that order. I can tell you that not only that Andrew Marr clip we've just listened to, there is nothing of that quality happening in this country, here in Australia. The BBC, as much as commercial radio stations in the UK and commercial broadcasting organisations complain about it, it don't half raise the standards. The inane crap that comes out of the speakers in the car when I'm here when we're driving the kids to school or whatever. It's just abysmal. So the BBC is not only great for being the BBC, it's great for planting a flag standards-wise that other people have to live up to and compete with. I miss having the BBC. I think, again, like the NHS, we take it for granted. I've got to pay $100 if I want to go and see a GP over here. And again, another thing the organisations have is that they are probably not sustainable. But yeah, as you mentioned, a public service body, there are anachronisms. And you mentioned the idea that there are so many regulatory guidelines that probably make the creative people like Andrew Marr and Simon Mayo feel stifled. But and I understand why, if you are a creative and ambitious person and creative and ambitious enough to have sustained a 20-year career at the BBC, you might want to throw off the shackles. Yes,
you would. People like, Andrew Marr was, these people we're talking about Simon Mayo probably was more of a BBC lifer than Andrew Marr, because Andrew Marr came from the papers before he went to the BBC. The same for a lot of them, actually. Robert Peston's another one who's now ITV and so on. This is quite sort of British broadcasting focused here. But to bring it back round to Australia, one of the best BBC presenters I ever worked with was John O'Coleman, of course. Late of your parish, and much missed. So because I knew him, and he was, with people coming the other way, there were some really good people there coming from Australia to the UK, who didn't quite. They were obviously very diligent. They were very, very clever, very astute broadcasters, but they also pushed the envelope a little bit as well. I remember Jono just say whatever.
Yeah, I think there were those that would argue that modern commercial music radio in the UK was basically structured and streamlined in the late 90s by a load of consultants who'd come over from Australia who had done it that way down here and run more successful business. But I don't want to talk about that, Steve. I don't want to talk about again, before we go down this rabbit hole, what I would like to do is one of the reasons we're not talking about Andrew Marr anymore and we're talking about the BBC is just one line I heard in the Americast podcast this week. Americast is the BBC's podcast about American news. They recently lost both of their presenters, John Sopel and Emily Maitlis, to LBC, who we've just mentioned. The new presenters this week, Sarah Smith and Justin, what's his name? Justin Fletcher, the bloke.
Justin Webb.
Justin Webb.
Yeah.
Justin Fletcher is Mr. Tumble. An idiot. Another very important thing. But Mr. Tumble reared my children. At the end of the Americast podcast, there was one line not said by either of the presenters, but said in the sort of station imaging, now available on the BBC Sounds app, which you can get anywhere in the world now. So I've famously said on here that I've read over or listened to over 500 audiobooks on the Audible app, but that is not the most used app on my phone. The most used app on my phone is the BBC Sounds app. Before I spoke to you this morning, I was listening to the preview for the Formula One this weekend in Brazil. I listened to the evening PM news program from Radio 4 when I get up in the morning and listen to the breakfast show just before I go to bed at night. Americast I've already mentioned. Newscast is something I think that's very new, and they're trying to make an accessible news podcast that talks to one issue at a time. It's slightly lightweight and fluffy.
Newscast has been going for a long time. That's kind of spawned all the others. So Americast came from Newscast, basically, because it's been under a number of guises. It was Brexitcast it started off as.
That was the original one, yeah. And that was in the run-up. But these things are brilliant. I also have to say I only listen to one music program at the moment, And that is on a weekly basis. I listen to Huey Morgan's show, or Huey Morgan from the Fun Loving Criminals, on BBC Radio 6 Music. It's amazing. The Fun Loving Criminals, they are a fair to middling band, but he basically spends 3 hours playing the music from New York that influenced that band. So it goes for everything from Run DMC to James Brown to Aerosmith, to some, music that's cooler than you are, that Huey clearly listens to when he's at home in his big leather chair smoking his cigar, his stogie. Having listened to the Today programme in my garden, then when I go to bed, I will have a flick through the drama section and put something on play to listen to as I nod off. In the crime section alone, there's so much there. The one that jumped out at me, I was listening to something yesterday they just uploaded that was an original, a 1940 drama about a Titanic-like incident. Just straight taken off the wax cylinder and plonked on the airwaves. It's absolutely brilliant. And I finished most of it, but there is new stuff still trickling through. And I don't know if you've heard Bill Nye playing Charles Parrish, the detective.
I've not. No. I mean, do you have a clip maybe I can listen to?
I might just. So I'm on a rant. This is a stream of consciousness from me. But yeah, so you can imagine Bill Nye plays a slightly booze-addled actor living with his ex-wife, failing to get jobs and solving murders. And he's normally having a drink at lunchtime, and it sounds a bit like this.
I managed to convince stage management that a nosebleed didn't require A&E. Then Tony Delaunay, our ever-attentive company manager, ushered me into the nearest pub for a recuperative stiff drink or four.
Another large scotch.
Cheers.
Oh, love it. Yeah, you can't beat a bit of Bill Nye, can you?
You can't. Am I ranting, Steve? Do you use the BBC Sounds app, Steve?
Yeah, of course, absolutely heavily. I'll tell you what I was listening to, because it runs deep, and so for our international listeners, one of the more famous stations in the UK is called Radio 1. So it's where basically official kind of pop radio started, basically back in the early 60s, and they celebrated their 40th birthday like a few years ago, and they set up this pop-up radio station called Radio 1 Vintage, where all your favourite old presenters from when we were kids and everything did an hour each, and it's been brilliant. I'd like Steve Wright, who's just left Radio 2, which is one of the biggest presenters in the UK. He's left his afternoon show, still on Radio 2, but he's left his afternoon show. Just listening back to all the things he used to do when I was a kid, like on Radio 1, like when it was all hip and happening, all the characters he used to do. So yeah, so I've been listening to that. There's Tunnel 29 as well. So for dragging it slowly back to audiobook style stuff, Tunnel 29 is an amazing audio documentary focusing on this one guy, but a group of people who tunneled out of East Germany to the west, and this one guy who tunneled back to rescue loads more people, and it's all the furniture of it, the structure of it, it's all done as though it's happening in real time, and that gives an extra sort of real pace to it. So I really recommend Tunnel 29 if you haven't listened to that. Also, The Missing Crypto Queen as well is about Dr. Ruja Ignatova and the biggest scam ever about a cryptocurrency that didn't have what's called a blockchain, ladies and gentlemen, which means you were basically, all these people were pouring their savings into this coin, this missing cryptocurrency, and mining more coins, if you like. It's all virtual, by the way. And the point of a cryptocurrency is you can exchange it for real money, but there wasn't that there, and she mysteriously disappeared. Anyway.
Right, before you go into explaining blockchain, I think what we have illustrated here is the sheer depth of content that you and I can be enthusiastic about. We perhaps been loath to talk about it too much because the vague impression we get is it's quite hard to get the BBC Sounds app anywhere else in the world. At this point, by the way, there are lots of people who think the content's great on it and the interface is terrible. I don't mind the interface. As a techie person, Steve, is the app all right for you?
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, I'm really pleased.
No, someone was someone was whinging to me about it the other day. I went, "What are you on about?"
I like the idea of being able to find. Actually, when I have it on the car, there's a button on the in the car. So when you just before you set off, it just says unmissable sounds, and it just plays you just random stuff you would have listened to. And I found so much great stuff just by hitting that random button, and they just sort of chuck stuff on it. I like that sort of thing.
I think, sort of a shuffle button. I think there's a thing here. I think there's something that we, if there's a difficulty with the interface, it's reflected by the conversation that you and I are having at the moment. We're both kind of spewing enthusiastically about different things we've listened to on BBC Sounds. So maybe, and this is a notes from the margin bit, maybe you and
This is a note from the whole podcast has been a note from the margin.
Sidebar.
Yes. Half an hour ago, we started to review a history of modern Britain. Yeah.
And then we moved on, and I hope our passion and enthusiasm for the BBC as an organisation and for the content that they produce, the variety of the content that they produce, the quality of their world-leading quality of the content produced is something that you and I have always been passionate about. So I think from time to time, we should be proponents of BBC Sounds for an international market. Where I think my perspective, as I say, most of the time, me living in Australia is a pain in our backside. But in cases like this, I realise how lucky we British people are to have the BBC, to have the BBC Sounds app, where perhaps the main difficulty of navigating it is that there's so much content on there. And maybe as part of what we do, we should explore a bit of BBC Sounds every week. By the way, here's a question for you. Have you got a conventional radio in your house?
I have a digital radio to my right. Is that all right?
Okay. And what about the kitchen?
Yep, I have a digital radio in the kitchen that also picks up FM and medium wave.
Okay. And the bathroom?
Lord, no, that's not a place for the condensation will get inside the insides, wouldn't it? It'll corrode. No, I don't know.
No, but I used to have a radio set in every house, in every room of the house. And in our new house, I don't have a radio anymore.
What?
I consume LBC on YouTube, and I listen to the BBC on the BBC, the walled garden of the BBC Sounds app. And I think, as I say, you and I both grew up listening to the BBC and the commercial stations that had to work hard to compete for audience against them. And just the way we've consumed these things has changed so much. And there's a thing out there where there's lots of stuff that I would like to introduce to an audience that it hasn't heard it before, and also find out what they think of it.
So we need to expand maybe the premise of AudioBookClub, because this will go beyond audiobooks, won't it, of course?
Yes. Now, there's a rumour doing the rounds that somebody wants to change the name of AudioBookClub.
Well, although my suggestion probably won't fit the parameters now, but I mean, I'll just one more thing, if I may, on BBC Sounds.
Of course, Steve. This is why I brought it up, because I love hearing you talk about the BBC.
Yeah. One thing about it, and to bring it right back round to what we do on this podcast, is you've got quite possibly the original audiobook format, which was book at bedtime on Radio 4.
Mm-hmm.
So, the idea of audiobooks, all we hear primarily is audible. And so absolutely we should, and this is something I've been sort of dropping in for the last few weeks, but we haven't got round to doing it. There are other platforms out there, platforms that are maybe sort of having different kinds of genres, new writers, self-publishing, all this kind of stuff, There's one, so BBC Sounds falls into this category of actually you can't get it on Audible, you can get it on BBC Sounds. There's another one as well called Spiracle as well, which I probably joined about a month or so ago.
How's that going?
I've not tried it yet. I wanted to do it specifically for this show, and I wanted to talk to someone from Spiracle. I want to see if we can get someone from Spiracle on there to explain what makes Spiracle different to Audible. It's obviously a much smaller outfit. There's no app. There's a web app. So is that a good thing, bad thing? You can't download, really, I'm guessing. But anyway, but that's another one we should try. And if anyone knows of any other platforms out there that we should, Big Finish is another one, the Big Finish app.
Yeah.
You know, they're constantly pumping out dramas and so on. So anything else, you know, let's just suck it all up and spew it all out with recommendations.
I think that's a great idea. Now, listen, we've overrun a little bit this morning.
We have.
I've got to dash and you've got to go to bed. So should we do Spiracle next week?
We'll do Spiracle next week. Just the one final thing about the thing that we spoke about earlier on about the changing the name is because there are quite a few. I'm concerned that maybe people are having trouble finding us, you know? Lots of Audiobook Club podcasts, as we keep sort of saying. So should maybe a name change? And it's only because it hit me in the car the other day, and I was thinking, I just came into my head like, play me a book.
I'll
park. I'll leave that. Yeah, play me a book. Yeah. It works a little bit, but I mean, you know, it's something that no one else has. Hang on,
I am terrible at naming things. I was having this discussion with our friend Shane actually this week. He's starting a podcast, and I said, "Don't ask me about naming it." So, the studio, the program I do on Vision Australia Radio. Every other show on the station is called things like Talking Vision and Eyesight, and I go, can I just have a show that doesn't have an eyesight pun in the title? You know, it's a show. So I called it Studio One, and of course now nobody knows what that is. You have to explain what it is afterwards. I want a neutral, generic name, and the thing about Audiobook Club is it does what it says on the tin, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
It's such a good name. That's why the .com has gone. That way we have to have audiobookclub.net and use the hashtag audiobookclub. See, I did it there. I snuck in the branding, Steve.
Yeah, very good. Nice one. Subtle.
But it does what it says on the tin. It's interesting to see. Again, maybe this will make our life much easier now that we're going to be listening to some abridged content. We've seen them come and we've seen them go, the Audiobook Club podcasts. You can find other ones out there. You'll find that most of them, their last episode was in 2016 or towards the end of lockdown. Yeah. They lasted that long because it's actually quite a lot of work, isn't it? If we're dealing with a 30, and this is the first week I haven't done my homework, but dealing with a 30-hour book and perhaps listening to it, trying to listen to it twice, there aren't that many hours in a week. So I like Audiobook Club for the moment, but should we keep a watching brief on that? And also take suggestions from any of the genius listeners who have managed to find us. And the numbers are going up and it's making me quite happy. But if you are listening and you have an opinion on what our name should be, please do get in touch.
Yeah, there's the small things. We don't want to be sort of self-referential about all this stuff, do we? What should we be called?
Do you know what? People complain about it. People go, why are you talking about the mechanics of it? Because actually, you know what? If you're listening to Audiobook Club, you are probably a fan of audio entertainment. And actually, strangely enough, we don't give you and I don't give ourselves enough credit for saying, well, we know how this works. We know the thought that goes behind it because we've worked in the world's leading organization for audio entertainment. I think you and I, this sounds really arrogant, but I think you and I underestimate how much we know. And actually, if you're interested in audiobooks and podcasts, sometimes how they're made and the decisions that are made to make them go on, it's quite an interesting part of the story. I think Audiobook Club is very clever, but as you point out, it might just be too clever or not clever enough. I don't know. But I think that discussion in the context of what we do, which is talking about audio entertainment, I don't think it's too bad an idea to occasionally have a meeting during the podcast.
Yeah, I agree. I like these. It's warts and all, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
hanging everything
but
out
but
there.
also but how it's made is quite interesting. Maybe we talk about at some point how you get into radio or how you get into podcasting. Maybe that would be of interest to people. Look, I've really got to go, Steve. Can I ask one favour?
Yeah.
Can you do your roundup and tell us what we're doing next week? And then can I play the Andrew Marr clip again?
Of course you can. Yes. Okay. So there we are. That was a history of modern Britain. By the way, if I may, just very briefly, 30 seconds talk about the book. I know you've got to go.
Yeah.
But if I can just squeeze just literally 30 seconds.
Go on.
This is an amazing book. This is the history of modern Britain, also the making of modern Britain, which goes back further in time. Is a very, very accessible, very engaging, very tongue-in-cheek delivery as well, but serious when it needs to be. And I really recommend it to anybody. That's A History of Modern Britain by Andrew Marr. There are two versions, one narrated by Andrew Marr, the other one narrated by David Timson. We've tried both. We like the Andrew Marr version. It was released a fair few years ago, 6 years ago now. Comes in at, 29 hours if you go for the David Timson version. I think it's shorter if you do the Andrew Marr version, but I'll check out the date there. And for next week, what are we going to be listening to?
I think we're going to be exploring the new app that is Spiracle.
We'll do Spiracle. Okay. Are we doing Geneva by Richard Armitage still?
We can keep it in there. We always give two things that are coming up, don't we? So let's.
We do.
In the next couple of weeks, we will have covered both Geneva and the Spiracle app.
The Spiracle app, yeah. I've noticed also in the script you've written down the spare ?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Are we going to
you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean by the spare? Don't you?
I do know what you mean by the spare. Yeah.
Would you care to explain to anybody who doesn't know what the spare is?
The Spare is the only book you've been reading about in the newspapers for the past 2 weeks.
Not in this country.
No, really. Not fast.
No.
This is Prince Harry's Prince Harry's memoir or account of his life.
And the title itself is, I think it's brilliant. So the old, and forgive me for mansplaining it, but the idea was if you were a king in the olden days, you'd have two sons, the heir and the spare. And of course, William is the heir and Harry is the spare. So it's quite a sort of a punchy title, I think. I don't know if I want to listen to it. Do we want to do the spare, Steve?
Let's put a pin in it for the moment. We've got our work cut out for the next week or so with Geneva. Let's talk about Spiracle as well. So, yes, let's reconvene. And if anyone wants to chip in, should we review it? Dear listener, let us know. Let us know. Anyway, we'll say goodbyes now, and then we'll sign off with Andrew Marr. How's that?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Great. Okay.
Love you. Bye. You hang up first.
This has been Audiobook Club. We'll see you next week. Here's Andrew Marr. Ta-da.
Good evening to you. Now, my job as a reporter, as I see it, is pretty simple. It's to tell you what I think is going on away from the cameras and the microphones as well as in front of them. And there's lots to tell you today. But first, if you'll forgive me, I want to say something a little more personal, because overnight I've been reflecting on an interview I did with Max Hastings, the historian and former Telegraph editor, who talked of his grief as someone who loves this country, about how it was being made to seem absurd in the eyes of the world. Well, I love this country too. I love its weather and its humour and its buildings and its tolerance and variety and its beer and even, yes, its food. I've written books and made films about its history. Among my family who fought in the last war, we lost a Spitfire pilot over Norway and a very young naval lieutenant at Dunkirk. I'm a patriotic member of a patriotic family, and there is nothing about our current economic and political crisis that doesn't make me squirm with embarrassment and grief.
AI agents are everywhere, automating tasks and making decisions at machine speed. But agents make mistakes. Just one rogue agent can do big damage before you even notice. Rubrik Agent Cloud is the only platform that helps you monitor agents, set guardrails, and rewind mistakes, so you can unleash agents, not risk. Accelerate your AI transformation at Rubrik.com. That's RUBRIK.com.